To move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Swin. It is a pleasure to serve with your chairmanship. High streets and town centres play a huge role in our community. They're a place where people come together, they define our sense of place and can be a source of local pride. And they can be home to a huge number of jobs and opportunities. Retail is the largest private sector employer in the UK. And when coupled with the hospitality sector, they're some of the biggest drivers of social mobility. There are endless stories of those who started as shelf stackers or pint pullers making it to the boardroom. Jobs that are accessible to all and where hard work can pay off. And then there are those small family businesses, the people-powered engine room of our economy. Individuals who dared to take the risk and have a punt, who get up early to drive their businesses forward, creating jobs whilst adding colour, flavour and vibrancy to our town centres. In recent times, the rise of online shopping and changing consumer habits, coupled with the cost of living, have created a challenging environment for many businesses operating on our high streets. It's for that reason that now more than ever, we should be backing the Great British High Street. It's also why it's so astonishing that the government's budget not only failed to back our high streets, but actually seems to be beating them into extinction. The national insurance tax rate, the slashing of small business rates relief and the ending of the community ownership fund will do irreparable damage to our high streets. And that's before we mention the impact and costs of the Employment Rights Bill. In the last Parliament, I campaigned for the 75% relief for leisure, hospitality and retail businesses. This was game-changing for many. But with the stroke of a pen, the Chancellor slashed that relief, ending the lifeline that was thrown to many of these employers. It's estimated that this will represent a 140% increase in business rates for more than 250,000 high street premises in England. The average shop will see business rates increase from £3,589 to £8,613. The average pub will see its business rates increase from £3,938 to £9,451. And the average restaurant will also see their bill rocket from £5,051 to £12,122. This is a huge cost for small businesses in an already challenging environment that will prove insurmountable for many. But it doesn't stop there. The government's national insurance tax rate, its jobs tax, is doing exactly what everybody said it would do. Already job losses in the retail sector are mounting up. Tesco have already announced plans to axe 400 jobs. New Look are expected to close as many as 91 stores. And I will.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. I'm really grateful, firstly, for my honourable friend bringing forward this debate, but for allowing me to intervene. And the point he makes is a really important one. He's mentioned New Look, he's mentioned Tesco. I think we've already heard comments from Marks and Spencer. HSBC is another group. Some of these big high street names we're hearing of making job losses, but it's not just those, it's the smaller businesses as well. Does he agree with me, though, that you can't simply keep squeezing and squeezing businesses, thinking, oh, they're making lots of profit, they can pass it on to their customers? You squeeze and you squeeze them out of business, which means loss of jobs, loss of vibrancy on our high streets, and loss of that sense of community that is so, so important.
So, as a former Woolies worker, I know only too well the consequences for businesses. Not only is it squeezing many of these businesses out of a future, it's got a cost to be paid on the prices in those stores, it's got a cost on those jobs and the opportunities that they provide for young people and for others to get on in life. Huge costs to what's been done. And cashing in, you can only squeeze so far. The pips are definitely squeaking in retail. Sainsbury's have announced plans to axe 3,000 jobs. Retail and hospitality are already two of the most taxed businesses in our economy, but the sectors employ large numbers of people in entry-level or part-time roles, so are disproportionately hit. A CBI survey of business leaders found that 62% are slashing hiring plans. Almost half would be forced to lay off staff, and 46% are looking to delay pay rises for their workforce. Almost every Labour government in history has left office with more people out of work than when they arrived. But with these measures, it looks like this government is trying to set a record. All too often we see employment figures, numbers, but the jobs that will be lost as a result of this measure aren't just numbers. They're families without the security of a pay packet, people stripped of ambitions, of dreams, of aspirations, and left on the scrap heap. The commercial director at the British Independent Retailers Association gave a realistic but depressing summary of what the budget means for retailers. He said it was the worst budget for the high street in 35 years working in retail, and that it showed a complete disregard for the thousands of shop owners who form the backbone of our high streets. Small retailers who've already endured years of challenging trading conditions now face a perfect storm of crippling cost increases. Their business rates will more than double, while they're simultaneously hit with employer national insurance increases. So the outlook is bleak for traders because of the budget. But beyond that, the previous government sought to support high streets by responding to changing consumer habits, investing to reconfigure our town centres, create other reasons and purposes to go to our town centres. Funds like the Community Ownership Fund allowed people to take back control of their community assets, turning around vacant and lifeless high streets. These were more than a lick of pain, but about creating valuable community spaces and restoring pride in our towns. And what's more, I will.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for giving way. Dina, a constituent of mine who runs a small high street business, is seriously concerned about the possible removal of small business rate relief. Would my honourable friend agree that a commitment from the government about the future of rate relief would give reassurance to high street business owners like Dina?
I think you're very right. I think for many of those very small businesses, actually the specific relief for leisure, hospitality and retail already having been slashed, that relief has already been slashed from 75% to 40%. The end consequence being more than doubling what they're paying in business, and it's just not affordable. It's not affordable for businesses who are struggling to carry on employing people, to carry on doing businesses with all the other challenges that come their way. It's simply not affordable. It's the wrong thing to do. It has costs for our communities and costs for those employers. Around the Community Ownership Fund, these weren't just a lick of paint. They were about turning around vacant and lifeless high streets. They created community spaces, valued community spaces, restoring pride in our towns. And what's more, community-owned assets are estimated to contribute £220 million to the economy each year. In my own constituency of Stockton West, under the last government, we'd seen real progress in taking our town centres forwards. In Thornaby, the £23.9 million town deal we secured from the last government has allowed us to achieve many things, including the creation of a new vocational training centre, security and energy interventions in some of the most challenging housing, and upgrades to cycling infrastructure, and much, much more. But for the town centre, it's allowing us to build a new swimming pool, driving footfall to town centre businesses. And for years, Thornaby's skyline was dominated by the eyesore that was the disused Golden Eagle Hotel. But now, thanks to government money from the last government, and following a long debate with the council, it's finally coming down. These moves are game-changing for Thornaby, will drive further footfall to local businesses and restore pride in our town centre.
Honourable friend, give way.
I will.
I'm very, very grateful, and yet again he's demonstrating what a great champion he is for Stockton West and why he's got a reputation in this place for being one of the hardest working MPs in Teesside. But does he agree with me that high streets are a lifeline of our local communities in the Scottish Borders? I'm very, very fortunate to have a whole number of small and very vibrant high streets, but they are being hammered. The businesses on those high streets are being hammered not only by the Labour government's tax hikes through national insurance, but the Scottish Government, the SNP government's tax hikes through business rates.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you look at high streets and their value, it's not just the businesses, it's not just the jobs. They're the places where people come together, it's the places where people come to tackle isolation, and it's that feeling of pride in what our town centres mean. But these businesses only have so much money to give and so much money to be taxed, and it's going that bit too far now to the point where we're going to lose these businesses forever. In Yarm, levelling up money, I'm going to carry on my list of wonderful things that are going on in Stockton. In Yarm, levelling up money from the last government means that we're seeing nearby Preston Park improved and upgraded with new exhibition spaces, upgraded toilets and cafe, more parking, sorting the disused debris and creating a tribute to our railway heritage. This will drive visitor numbers to our area and complement the changes taking place in the High Street, where we've seen the town's skanky public toilets replaced. Streetscape interventions are now planned to make the town centre more accessible, and we've gained a much-needed car park. And the levelling up money from the last government has also helped the Town Council in Yarm in delivering on their ambition to renew our town hall, creating a visitor centre fit for the amazing High Street that is Yarm. In Stockton, £16 million of future High Streets funding has allowed for the complete reconfiguration of our High Street, also making way for our new £25 million diagnostic hospital. Securing the money for the diagnostic hospital remains my proudest contribution during my time as an MP, because I know the huge difference it will make to the people of Stockton. We ran a petition and gathered thousands of signatures to demonstrate public support. I was involved with the NHS Trust and local authority officers drawing up the bid at its inception, and when the bid was initially rejected due to a prolonged delivery timetable, I met the Secretary of State to hear his reasoning, and then that same day met with directors from all the stakeholders to come back with a renewed timetable and a plan to unlock this investment. In the very near future, the doors will open on that centre, which will provide 104,000 life-saving test checks and scans to local people every year. And importantly, will be yet another reason for would-be punters to come to our town centre and support local businesses. These interventions, funded by the last government, are game-changing for my community and in other communities across the country, repurposing our town centres to drive footfall and keep them as vibrant as the vibrant heart of our community. But now the taps of government investment look to have been turned off. Efforts to innovate and reconfigure town centres will be paused. Our high street businesses are being battered by the budget, and the consequences are there for all to see. Too many businesses are closing, too many jobs are being lost, and boarded up high streets and town centres will eat away at the pride people can have in their communities and town centres. I'd like to ask the Minister if the government really appreciates the challenges posed to high street businesses by the national insurance increase, and similarly the impact of the slashing of business rates relief for small leisure, hospitality and retail businesses. I'd like to ask whether communities across the country will ever again be able to benefit from the game-changing interventions brought about by the Community Ownership Fund, Levelling Up Funds, Town Deals and other such funds that allowed for these interventions to protect the future of our high streets. As a former Woolworths worker, I could go on all day about the loss of iconic retailers. I could go on all day about the impact of the budget on post offices, on local pubs, on opportunities for young people. And I won't even mention my Labour Council's ridiculous plans to introduce car parking charges in Yarm and Stockton High Street. I've probably said enough on that, but I'll leave it at that. Suffice to say that I'm a fan of the Great British High Street and believe securing its future should be a priority for any government. Thank you.
Let's start with an informal limit of 5 minutes. Greg Poynton.
Thank you, Sir Desmond, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Stockton West for securing this important debate. I will focus my remarks on Scottish high streets, which should be the beating heart of our communities, because thriving high streets and the businesses based there promote thriving local economies. And more than that, they promote a thriving civic culture, a genuine sense of pride amongst people about the place in which they live and the community in which they are part of. And yet, right across Scotland, our high streets and our main streets have seen better days. Yet the decline of these high streets, main streets and town centre are not inevitable, and there are communities across Scotland already taking innovative action to arrest this decline. Just one example, in my constituency, I recently had the pleasure of visiting West Calder and Harburn Development Community Trust, which is transforming the iconic Central Bakery in West Calder into the Scottish Cooperative Discovery and Activity Centre. It's an incredible £6 million project which will create jobs, investment and training opportunities in the area and will honour our cooperative roots. A few months ago I also met with the traders from West Calder, and they've got a vision for the main street which is about solidarity amongst their businesses, supporting each other to grow and to thrive. Projects and business people like this demonstrate that with vision, energy and determination, the decline of our town centres and high streets is far from inevitable. More than that, the rejuvenation is possible. Go ahead.
I thank my honourable friend, and he's making an excellent speech, because for too long, places like Slough have been painted with empty and boarded up shop faces. Local businesses are, of course, at the heart of our community, but after over a decade of cuts by the previous Tory governments and rampant antisocial behaviour, they have been struggling and have been left hollowed out. Does my honourable friend agree that allocating more resources and attentions to places like Slough High Street is more vital than ever to boost the confidence of local businesses and residents and help revitalise town centres?
Yeah, I completely agree with my honourable friend, and I think the point he makes on antisocial behaviour is a really strong one, that these town centres and high streets need to be a place where people feel safe and want to spend time with them and their families. So rejuvenation of our high streets and town centres is possible, but only the problem we've had in Scotland is the Scottish Government has failed to have that same vision, energy and determination for those places. And sadly, there's been little in the way of action from the SNP. However, as always with the SNP, there's been no shortage of reports over their 18 years in power. So since 2013, we've had the National Town Centres Review, we've had the Town Centre Action Plan, we've had the Town Centre Action Plan Year 1 Progress Report, the Town Centre Action Plan Year 2 Progress Report, the Town Centre Action Plan Review, a New Future for Scotland's Town Centres Report, a joint response to that report with COSLA, then the Town Centre Action Plan 2, which is a response to that response. Little wonder that David Lonsdale, the director of the Scottish Retail Consortium, spoke recently of the need for coherent policy making. The fact is that Scotland's town centres are yet another casualty of the SNP's mismanagement and chaotic government. Of course.
A moment of consensus. Absolutely agree with him in terms of his criticism of the SNP government. But does he agree with me that part of the change that could be made in Scotland is the planning system? If we allow our high streets to be much more flexible in terms of how they respond to the challenges that they're facing, that's the way to get new life and new blood into something which traditionally has been at the heart of the community.
I completely agree with that, and I think that we need to be much more creative in the way in which we use the units. Some of these businesses, frankly, are not coming back to our high streets, and we should be honest about that, and then look at other options, for example, childcare, co-working spaces and potentially housing as well in the town centres to help rejuvenate those places and get them into action. So I think that creative policy making is absolutely required on planning. And there are, as I say, a number of steps that the Scottish Government can take. Firstly, I think we need a level playing field amongst the small businesses based on our high street versus the online global retailers. Secondly, as we talked about, more thought needs to go into the housing stock being built in our towns. With many buildings left empty, it's right to relax those planning rules and make it easier to convert shop fronts into flats, still ensuring their quality housing for their residents. Third, the ways in which people of work now have changed, and our town centres must reflect that. So I think we need a priority on super-fast broadband into our town centres. Also, local plans should take into account childcare and making them again thriving places to be. And fourth, councils should be encouraged to use the powers available to them to make ownership data on high street properties public, to have the opportunity for community potentially could step in and take over some units. And finally, as my honourable friend had mentioned, town centres will never feel safe, will never thrive unless people feel safe in them. So a focus on town centre safety is absolutely key too. So all of these ideas can perhaps contribute to making them a better place to live. None would constitute a revolution, but they would be revolutionary for millions of people living in our towns. Because for too long, main streets in towns and villages such as Falthouse, Broxburn, West Calder, Uphall and others in my constituency have been neglected by an SNP Scottish Government. This can change, but it will require we can refresh and rejuvenate our high streets, but it will require fresh and rejuvenated leadership.
Very ill. Al Pinkerton.
Desmond, I would like to say thank you for to allow me to speak, but you've given me a real challenge. Nonetheless, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. I thank the honourable gentleman for Stockton West for securing this important debate. For generations, high streets have been at the heart of our communities. We all know that, providing spaces where local businesses thrive, social connections flourish, and economic growth is driven from the grassroots. Yet the United Kingdom, across the United Kingdom, high streets are in decline. Businesses are closing at an alarming rate, crime and antisocial behaviour are depressing footfall, and an outdated business rate system is stifling local enterprise. In my constituency of Surrey Heath, we have numerous high streets across market towns and villages, all of which are interconnected into a larger ecosystem. Camberley, our historic market town has struggled to grow over the past 5 years. Despite being just 28 miles from central London, its town centre is suffering from increased vacancy rates, crime, antisocial behaviour and public infrastructure that persistently fails to meet the needs and expectations of local businesses and residents. Our high streets should be hubs of activity, but they're being undermined by long-term government support, absence of government support and mounting economic pressures. One of the greatest challenges that I hear from local businesses is related to the broken business rates system. In 2025-26, for example, despite paying business rates in excess of £30 million, businesses in Surrey Heath will see just £900,000 of their contributions reinvested back into their local community. That's just 3% of the business rates that are raised. The vast majority of revenue raised through business rates is spirited away from the place of generation and collection by central government. And of course, that is not in any way unique to Surrey Heath. It's a national problem that discourages investment in our high street while allowing online retailers and large multinationals to operate under a significantly lighter tax burden. And the Lib Dems, of course, have long argued that the business rate system is outdated and unfair. It penalises bricks and mortar businesses who are vital to our communities. And I truly hope that the government... I will give way on that point. Thank you.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. He's making a fantastic speech. He will know the importance of pubs and to our high streets, particularly in rural areas, to drive footfall and support our rural economies. I spoke to a tenant of a pub in Castle Carey who was trying to develop a community space for social and cultural cohesion, particularly at a time when the town is growing quite significantly. So does my honourable friend agree with me that the government's proposed changes to business rates by properties with rateable value as above £500,000 is potentially ruinous for many pubs on our high streets and in our rural villages?
I do agree with that assessment. I have pubs in my particular patch that say exactly the same things to me, and of course they're not the same kind of more rurally sensitive communities that you're referring to in your question to me. But yes, I fundamentally agree with your analysis. And as I say, that's not a situation that's unique to Surrey Heath or to your patch at all. So I do hope that the government will commit to fundamental reform of that particular tax structure. Another issue that I'm seeing in Surrey Heath is the growth of shoplifting and antisocial behaviour. It deters customers, it suppresses footfall, and it makes it more difficult for businesses to operate and to thrive. In Camberley, our main market town, that is causing significant losses to businesses, and business owners tell me that they are tempted to move away altogether from our community because of the challenge that faces. Police have issued dispersal orders across many market towns across this country, but I would like to ask the Minister explicitly, the Secretary of State explicitly, what assessment he has made as to that, the effectiveness of those particular measures. Of course, there should be far greater police visibility in our town centres to deter crime and to give the businesses the necessary encouragement and support that they need in order to thrive. So, in conclusion, because I only have a few seconds left, can I ask the Minister, has the Government considered reforming business rates to ensure local communities retain more of the revenue generated by local high street businesses, as they expect to happen already? And what support is in place for high street businesses facing closure due to crime and anti-social behaviour? Thank you.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And also I'd like to thank my neighbour, the member for Stockton West, for securing this debate, and particularly for devoting so much of his speech for outlining some of the achievements of our local Labour Council in Stockton in developing our town centres. Stockton is known for having the widest high street in Britain, but it's the breadth of the vision of our Labour Council that I'd really like to share with colleagues today, because I think there are some opportunities here that might be of benefit to other areas. Labour Councillor Nigel Cook said many years ago that the future of the high street is about leisure, culture and recreation as much as it is about shops, and Stockton Council have put everything behind achieving this. The single biggest, most noticeable thing you'll see on Stockton High Street, or in fact you would see if you go today, is the former Castlegate Shopping Centre, which was demolished by the council to much opposition locally. It resulted in a much higher rate of occupancy at the other end of the high street, up to 90% occupancy, but opened up for the first time in hundreds of years a vista across the high street to the river, the Cleveland Hills and Rosebery Topping beyond, creating an urban park that will be the centre of events in the future, because Stockton has turned itself into an events town, hosting many events on the high street throughout the year and throughout the other towns in the borough as well. And this has given us the opportunity to attract new businesses into the borough, and contrary to the usual doom and gloom about Stockton from the member from Stockton West, I took the opportunity to talk to the Stockton Business Improvement District before coming here today, and they tell me 3 businesses this week are planning to open up on Stockton High Street in the hospitality and leisure area. We've got great entrepreneurs like Nathan Lee, who's bought the Teesside Princess, a pleasure cruiser, who's fizzing with ideas for things that he wants to do to bring more footfall to our high street in that area. And remember me, tea rooms, they were sort of blocked in beside this terrible shopping centre. They're going to increase capacity so that they can serve people who are visiting the park. But it's not only in Stockton Town Centre, in Norton too, another lovely town in our area, which is a basis not only for daytime but the nighttime economy. And I think that brings me on to comments about safety as well. In our area, we saw a reduction in policing of 550 officers compared with the Labour government over the last Conservative government. But I made a commitment to have more police officers on the street. And I can say with the £2.4 million of funding we're getting from the government, there'll be 40 additional officers on the street. Yes, certainly, I'd be happy to give way.
Does the Honourable Member know how much it's costing us in national insurance contributions for our police force and the impact that that's going to have on police numbers in Cleveland?
Well, as the Police and Crime Commissioner for Cleveland said, the increase in national insurance contributions is not going to have an impact. In fact, overall, there'll be an increase in police officers, 40 in Stockton. 40 in Stockton, he said. I'm not going to give way anymore. You might want to listen to more I've got to say. You might want to intervene later because I've got more to say. 40 police officers, including some police officers dedicated to the high street so that people feel safe. They didn't feel safe under the last government. That was what was driving people out of the high street. And civic enforcement patrols and police officers will ensure that people feel safe in Stockton. And of course, the other thing this government's done is they've ended the effective decriminalisation of shoplifting for items under £200, because rather than standing with shoplifters, we're standing with shop workers. And then Billingham, where I think every child who grows up in Billingham thinks that every town in the country has an ice rink, but they don't. There is one in Billingham, and the council invested in Billingham Forum where it is. And of course, the residents of Billingham were left in the shameful condition of having been promised £20 million under the last government, but with no money there. And I really thank this government for coming forward with that funding so we can bring 10 derelict buildings back into use and create new commercial and retail space too. And what for the future? Well, the council are creating a medical health and care zone alongside our new diagnostic centre. It's not a hospital, it's a centre. And Teesside, hoping to have a medical school there as well, so we'll have medical students in that area too. I'm supporting and championing these initiatives, and quite shortly Billingham will be the UK's largest centre for biomanufacturing. So I encourage all my colleagues, come to Stockton for the Stockton and Darlington Railway's 200th anniversary this year, and we'll welcome you there to our town. Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity today to contribute to this debate on high street businesses. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend again, the member for Stockton West, for securing it, because he clearly demonstrates what a local champion for his constituency he is. And I on many occasions have visited Stockton and Yam. I've even been to Billingham, and I've been on the ice rink more than 1 or 2 years ago. But high streets are the beating heart of our communities. They provide jobs, essential services and a vital sense of place. But all too often, small businesses feel they're fighting an uphill battle, grappling with rising costs, declining footfall, an ever-changing retail landscape and, of course, government policy. Many of these challenges are not new, but they have been fuelled by COVID, the cost of living crisis and rising inflation. And I am increasingly hearing from businesses in my constituency that more needs to be done. In Aldridge Brownhills, we're fortunate to have a vibrant network of independent businesses, many of them family-run shops and essential services that our residents rely on every day. One of these is Place to Eat, the most fantastic local fish and chip shop in Brownhills. If you're passing, I recommend their battered chips, which are a local Black Country speciality.
Honourable Lady, give way.
Of course.
I'm very, very grateful. She's giving an excellent speech. On behalf of the Scottish members, though, can I also recommend a deep-fried Mars bar supper and a haggis supper, which is also another delicate like to see that fish and chip shops might be able to provide.
Sir Desmond, my honourable friend reminds me of a visit to Scotland many years ago and trying a deep-fried Mars bar. I think it was in Blairgowrie. I must admit I've never had deep-fried haggis. I'm not sure about that one, but I've certainly tried the Mars bar. But yet, despite the hard work and determination, many businesses are struggling. I'm in regular contact with local businesses and they will tell me quite candidly about the financial pressures that they face. One issue that keeps coming up time and again is the crushing burden of employer national insurance contributions. Quite simply, it's a tax on jobs. It actively punishes the very businesses we should be supporting. Businesses are being squeezed into cutting staff hours, freezing recruitment, in some cases, as we've heard already, shutting their doors altogether. Household names we've heard today, WH Smith, New Look and HSBC are among those affected, and when they're gone, they are gone forever. But let's be clear, this is not just an economic issue, it's a community issue. When a high street business closes, it affects us all. It means fewer jobs, less investment in our local economy and empty shop fronts that drain the vibrancy of our centres. And the government cannot claim to support small businesses while quietly taxing them out of existence. In Brown Hills, one of the most pressing concerns is the derelict Ravenscourt shopping precinct. Once a thriving hub, it's now become an eyesore, for far too long attracting antisocial behaviour. Local business owners and residents are rightly frustrated by the slow progress. I am too. I have to say my local council and our councillors are working incredibly hard to deliver on this, with plans for redevelopment, including the prospect of a new supermarket, but delays, the need for a very complex CPO and drawn-out negotiations over remaining units are stalling much-needed investment. But this stagnation is not unique to Brown Hills. Across the country, high streets are being held back by vacant buildings that discourage footfall and undermine local economies. Add to this the increase in employer national insurance, and this only adds to the difficulties. So I'm just going to conclude by saying, if this government was serious about revitalising our high streets, there's two things actually they could do that would make a big difference to all our high streets. And that is to look again at employer national insurance contributions and take another look at business rates. Thank you.
Glyn, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Desmond. It's an honour to serve under your chairmanship. I thank the member for securing this debate. It's been a wonderful tour of everyone's high streets, albeit as a member of the Health and Social Care Select Committee, I can't recommend a deep-fried Mars bar. I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to those who, on top of running their own businesses, put time into a broader business community. These include Calder Valley's town deal boards, including in Todmorden, Elland and Brighouse, and those who've helped their towns thrive by having a bigger vision for what their towns can be. Even if we haven't always seen eye to eye when I was a local councillor and we had to discuss parking charges, local businesses show the spark that starts off with an individual idea, ends up in a dream that becomes part of a community of successful businesses, because success breeds success. Starting with Calder Valley is a series of towns all with their own personalities. Great proponents of this theory is the Totally Locally campaign, a national campaign which was founded in Calder Valley and remains active in the towns of Brighouse, Elland, Todmorden and Hebden Bridge. They extol the virtues of local businesses working together and the power of spending money locally. Their annual Magic Tenner campaign uses analysis from the New Economics Foundation that found that £10 spent in a local shop, then used with local suppliers and recycled again and again, could be worth as much as £50 to the local economy. They highlight this by having participating businesses offer deals for a tenner. And we're going to see this operating throughout Calder Valley and across the country, starting next week and running till March the 16th. And I urge people to take part in those Totally Local campaign. In closing, I'd like to pay tribute to the small business owners of Calder Valley who started with a dream and ended up building a proud business community. Thank you.
Jim Shannon.
Sir Desmond, a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Congratulate the Honourable Member for Stockton West for setting the scene, and I wish to give, as I always do, a Northern Ireland perspective to this debate, and I know the Minister is eager to hear that, and I'm very pleased to do so. There are so many issues facing our local high streets. Just to name a few, they're the empty units, that ultimately reduce the footfall where choice is reduced, dramatic increase in online shopping, a couple of clicks and you can order whatever you want nearly online now. Local businesses are also struggling to the high cost of energy, of rent, of business rates. the price of electricity and gas has got to be sustainable for businesses for the future. I always just talk very quickly. I'll probably talk quickly anyway, by the way, but I'll talk even quicker, perhaps. Mr. Chairman, the two towns I want to mention, Ballyhinch is a fantastic place to go to nip down and do some shopping. Newton Ards is the main town of the borough, where you can get everything that you want in relation to your home comforts and food. It's been a market town since the 1600s, and I'm very pleased even today that we have the market every Saturday in Newton Ards town. That brings people from all over the province, and it creates by its very nature a buzz around the area on the weekends. So I'd love to see on the high streets where so many independent retailers are the backbone of the economy. In Newton Ards, we've got hairdressers, salons, fashion shops, family-run coffee shops with coffee culture in Newton Ards now as well. And the charity shops can't be dismissed, by the way, because they're always good products for sale. And my mother was one of those people who was always keen to buy something for £1, and definitely an Ulster Scot, that's for sure. We must continue to invest in public spaces to fill these gaps and engage further with local councils to see what more can be done to revamp business rates so local shops can afford to stay open. Yes, okay.
I thank my honourable friend, the member for Strangford, for allowing me to intervene, because after over a decade of Tory government neglect, the number of PCSOs halved and the number of special constables down by over 2/3 since 2012. It has left places like Slough High Street plagued by an epidemic of antisocial behaviour. Does my honourable friend agree that this government must continue to prioritise the safety of our high streets and ensure that they can thrive, especially by targeting shoplifting?
Thank the honourable gentleman for that intervention, and he's absolutely right. Of course it is. In relation to making sure that the high streets are safe and secure, we've had a number of knife threats in shops in Newton Ards, and if it wasn't for the presence of the police there to stop that, then it could have escalated to something very, very much worse in relation to that. I'm going to finish with this here. I just look to the Minister for his commitment to local business, and I wish that he will, and I ask him this request, as I do often, would he engage directly with the Northern Ireland Assembly, with the ministers there. I think it's better when we do things together. We can exchange ideas, good ideas, and see how we can do it better. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I finish. Thank you.
Ewan Steinbank.
Thank you, Mr Swain. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I've never kept it a secret that I'm a proud Falkirk boy. I live in our town centre, do most of our shopping on our high street, and a couple of hours before the Bairns kick off on a Saturday at 3 p.m. you'll rarely find me more than a few feet far from a pint at one of our town centre pubs. Businesses on Falkirk High Street have been calling out for support for years, whether it be on parking, where the SNP Falkirk Council stopped the popular fee after 3 parking scheme, or the closure of Falkirk Town Hall in 2022, previously a major earner for our town centre on show night. Luckily, a replacement town hall in the centre of Falkirk is finally progressing with cross-party support, something I strongly endorse as a measure to regenerate our town centre. I acknowledge that for businesses across the UK there are challenges, but this is felt sharply in Scotland when around 3 shops a day closed in 2024. This government's commitment to rebalancing the tax burden away from the high street and towards the out-of-town giants I welcome, and I would urge them to move quickly and firmly in this direction. This is something the Scottish Government must look at urgently as well for our high street.
Well done,
I'll give way.
Thank you for giving way. Does he agree with me that the Scottish Government really need a new direction on the business rates, because not only have they not passed on the money, the Barnett consequentials that have come from the UK Government to hospitality and retail, but they have failed the town centres over the last 18 years.
Absolutely, and this is a point many hospitality businesses have said, when it's a narrower scope for business rates relief passed in yesterday's Scottish budget than it was in the Labour budget, which I welcome. They should revisit that decision. I also want to pay tribute to the fantastic work the Falkirk Business Improvement District does in our town. They know how to deliver local priorities, as not only are they on the ground with their finger on the pulse of the challenges facing Falkirk High Street, they are accountable to the town centre businesses in Falkirk who pay their bid levy. I would like to thank Linton Brown, who is stepping back from the Falkirk Delivers Board after an exceptional 30 years of service to our town. Elaine Grant and all of our team at Falkirk Bid are an asset to our high street. While the impact of energy shocks around the globe and behaviour from energy giants left bills spiralling over the last few years for consumers, the impacts on high street businesses has also been clear. I've heard stories from Falkirk High Street of bills quadrupling over the winter compared to where they were before the pandemic, and staff wearing 2 jumpers whilst working indoors. We must get serious across this House about building cheap, clean British energy as soon as possible, so that both our constituents at home and those that open businesses on the High Street can benefit. Increasing criminal behaviour on our High Street is also a concern. In my teens and early 20s, when I worked pulling pints and serving tables, when walking back to my car or jumping on a bus, I noticed an incrementally more hostile atmosphere. Unite Hospitality have led the way on this trend, and I want to reiterate my endorsement for the Get Me Home Safely campaign, which I and at the time council colleagues passed at a meeting of Falkirk Council in 2022. Hospitality workers have endured unacceptable threats, physical and sexual violence, and we must do more to work with employers to make our high streets safer. My constituents, Caroline and Gordon, are the long-term proprietors of Gordon's Newsagents in Camelin. Recently, they've been subject to 2 incidents of theft, violence, vandalism when they refused to sell alcohol to those who failed to provide ID. Crime impacts the margins and increases the likelihood of shop closure. I'll finish on this point. Businesses that comply with licensing conditions to protect young people and prevent crime and disorder, their story signals that they often fail to receive the same protection in return. We need more police on our streets. Thank you, Mr Swain.
Jazz Aswal, after whom we will hear from Steve Darling. Can I ask you, Mr Aswal, to be very brief?
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman, and I thank the member for Stockton West for this important debate. If we want to revive our high streets, we need innovative solutions that bring customers back to our high streets, as well as the basics of law and order, as has been mentioned. People must feel safe and it must be a pleasant experience. In my constituency of Ilford South, parking charges were preventative, preventing shoppers from visiting the high streets. They couldn't compete with the large supermarkets who offered free parking. As leader of the council, I listened to their local concerns and we intervened, and despite facing relentless cuts across the councils, we introduced 1 hour free parking. And of course, that one simple decision made sure footfall came back to our high streets. One simple change made a huge difference. Ilford is certainly home to growing businesses, but one of the biggest issues that businesses have is the lack of footfall from outside the area, which is why accessible local transport is so vital. And I welcome the Superloop introduced by the Mayor of London, as well as the Elizabeth line, which has opened up Ilford as something where people flock from miles around. Before the election, a major barrier to budding entrepreneurs was the challenge to securing affordable premises. Last year, the government launched the High Street Rental Auction Scheme, empowering local leaders to auction leases on premises that have stood empty for over a year. With 1 in 7 properties on our high streets sitting vacant, these initiatives is a crucial step towards reversing that trend. Despite the decline, our high streets can be revived and businesses can flourish once again through increased incentives for customers, lower burdens for business, pleasant experience for shoppers and a level playing field for all. And I thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Darling, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Sir Desmond Swain, and I will not take all that time because I know that time is pressing. And I'd like to first of all congratulate the member for Stockton West for obtaining this extremely important debate, and it has been well debated so far this afternoon. The area I would like to particularly draw on is antisocial behaviour and that impact, and our communities feeling unsafe to go out into our town centres. I go back to the cuts probably about 14 years ago, to the supporting people budgets, where we saw effectively 90% of that budget binned by that Conservative council at that time. And that was supporting people who have drug and alcohol issues, as well as many people who were vulnerable and needed support. The last count in Torbay was that there were 40 people sleeping rough and homeless across the bay. And that is absolutely shocking. It's more than doubled. And sadly, people sleeping rough make people feel unsafe and therefore not willing to go in our town centre. So we do need more funding for supporting people, but we do need the stick of more bobbies on the beat, more uniformed officers that can be seen there to support our communities. Going to the main meat here, though, we have seen the steady decline of our town centres over decades. Out of town and now online shopping have had a devastating effect on our town centres, and we need to make sure that local authorities have the ability to play shape, whether that is having the influence over stopping immediate transfer from retail to residential, or whether it is enhancing and speeding up the abilities of compulsory purchase orders. I'm only too alive to one in my constituency of Torbay, where it straddled the Ukraine war that meant that we saw a massive boost in the cost of the redevelopment of Paynton Town Centre, and now that particular location is just a car park. We have that uncertainty, and if we want to drive that imagination for our communities, we need that certainty. So please, can we look at streamlining those compulsory purchase orders? Finally, colleagues have mentioned about the massive impact on the national insurance hikes and how, whilst this is still slightly over the horizon, it is having a cold hand on the heart of our town centres and chilling them. And I fear that whilst the Conservatives may have almost nailed down the coffin lid on our town centres, the Labour Party will actually put the last nail in on Nick's. Rick Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my honourable friend for Stockton West for securing this important debate. He is right. High streets are the beating heart of communities and local economies across the whole United Kingdom. I see that in my own constituency with the wonderful mix of retail, of hospitality, of services on high streets such as Wendover, Princes Risborough and Great Missenden, as well as, importantly, those smaller retail parades in villages like Prestwood and Haddenham. They really are, as others have said, the beating heart of our local economies and communities. But, Sir Desmond, unlike Labour, Conservatives want businesses to keep more of their hard-earned money to grow and invest. We delivered in government the biggest long-term business tax cut in modern British history to the tune of £11 billion per year. We froze the small business multiplier, saving an average shop £1,650 a year. And we extended the retail, hospitality and leisure relief for a year, which directly supports high street businesses. Sir Desmond, we took a third of properties out of business rates completely through small business rates relief and froze the tax rate for the last 3 years. We introduced a 75% business rate relief for retail, hospitality and leisure, meaning the average pub in England's business rates were £6,650 lower than they would have been. Meanwhile, breaking their manifesto promise not to increase the amount of cash raised by the levy, this Labour government are delivering a stealth tax rise of £900 million this year and £2.7 billion next year through higher business rates. Rates paid by thousands of high street businesses will more than double next year as a result. Unlike Labour, we in government cut national insurance contributions for businesses. We abolished an entire class of NICs and cut the rate of the NICs top rate from 9% to 6%. Labour's first budget launched a £25 billion tax raid on British business, breaking their manifesto promise and imposing a jobs tax. They have increased employer national insurance contributions, clearly breaking commitments made throughout their general election campaign. A jobs tax that will increase the cost of employment to our high street employers and everyone else by £900 for the average worker. Labour's budget nearly halved business rates relief for retail, hospitality and leisure, more than doubling the business rates of eligible businesses. Atlas Group estimate that the reduction of the business rate discount for retail, hospitality and leisure firms in England from 75% to 40% from the 1st of April for the 25-26 financial year will mean an average 140% rise in business rates bills for more than 250,000 high street premises in England. The average shop will now see its business rates bill spiral from £3,589 to £8,613 next April for the 25-26 year, and the average business rate bill for pubs will increase from £3,938 to £9,451. Restaurants will see their average bill rising from £5,051 to £12,122. In short, Sir Desmond, this Labour government has complete disregard for the thousands of hard-working shop owners who form the backbone of our high streets. Not my words, Sir Desmond. Those are the words of the commercial director at the British Independent Retailers Association. Labour looked business owners in the eye. They told them they'd be on their side. And at the first opportunity, they imposed a slam dunk of measures to make it impossible to grow, to invest, or even, in some cases, to survive. Labour has zero credibility on this issue now. They are not the champions of our high streets they want to proclaim to be. The nation took them at their word, and their word has proven to be a gross misrepresentation.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Swain. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I would say from the outset, before I respond on behalf of the Government, that I'm a proud member of USDAW, a union which works tirelessly on behalf of its 360,000 members to negotiate better pay and conditions for shop workers throughout the country. I would like to thank all of the many members who have participated in this worthwhile and timely debate, and I would obviously want to pay eloquent tribute to each and every one of you who have spoken so compellingly about the high streets in individual constituencies across the country. I would of course also want to pay tribute to the member for Stockton West for securing today's debate, and thank him for speaking so eloquently. I particularly enjoyed his reference to the skanky toilets. In support of our high streets, I know this is a policy area in which he has shown considerable interest over many years, not least as the chair of the former APPG for the Future of Retail. And it's fair to say that he has been a persistent champion of high streets, not just in his constituency, but across the country, and therefore his insights and views are always welcome. Now, let me turn to some of the other colleagues who have spoken in the debate. Can I thank my honourable friend, the member for Livingston, for speaking so powerfully about the perpetual review roundabout that we see in Scotland in relation to planning and indeed the approach of the Scottish Government, alas, towards the high streets. I acknowledge the real, if temporary, cross-party consensus identified by the honourable gentleman, the member for Berwickshire, albeit I'm not sure there's quite as wide a culinary Caledonian consensus on the health and dietary benefits of the deep-fried Mars bar. Can I pay tribute to the member for Surrey Heath and confirm we share his ambition to strengthen safety on our high streets, an issue to which I will return. Let me also pay generous tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Stockton North. There is no stronger champion for Stockton and the interests of Stockton residents. I was particularly intrigued to hear, in light of some of the other contributions, about the 3 businesses that are planning to open on Stockton High Street. This is indeed welcome news, and I commend and congratulate my honourable friend for bringing this to the attention of the House. He also raised the critical issue of policing and public safety, again to which I will return. The honourable member for Aldridge Brownhills raised the issue of the fiscal measures announced in the budget, to which I will also return, although I note that no alternatives were offered in the course of that contribution. My honourable friend for Calder Valley added a perhaps necessary health warning, as I've mentioned, on deep-fried Mars bars, and spoke passionately about those Calder Valley businessmen and women who started with a dream and built a proud business community. There could be no more eloquent description of the experience of many entrepreneurs on high streets the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. Reference to the whole of the United Kingdom brings me to the honourable member for Strangford, who described his mother's careful management of the family budget, an all too common concern after the cost of living crisis that we've witnessed over recent years and after 14 years of Conservative economic mismanagement. Be assured this government wants, as he suggested, to ensure that businesses in every part of the United Kingdom, in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales and in England, benefit from measures delivering economic stability and the government's mission of growth. My honourable friend, the member for Falkirk, as both a proud bairn and a self-described Falkirk boy, described where and how he spends his Saturday afternoon. I'm not sure that would be wise for every member of this chamber, but nonetheless it was helpful and educative for the rest of us to understand his commitment to the local Falkirk community. He went on to pay generous tribute to the dangers that are faced by hospitality workers, not just in Falkirk, but in communities and indeed in high streets the length and breadth of the country. I would also concur that a new direction for Scotland, frankly, is needed, not just in relation to the high streets or planning or retail crime, but much, much more fundamentally. My honourable friend, the member for Ilford South, also spoke powerfully, and I noted carefully the remarks that he made. The honourable member for Torby, I felt, recognised a truth that was sadly missing in a number of the other contributions when he acknowledged, candidly and rightly, that high streets have faced challenges for decades. These are constantly changing retail offerings that we need to recognise are subject to pressures far beyond the reach of individual governments, but reflect changing patterns of life, of culture and of leisure. The opposition spokesman, the member for Mid-Buckinghamshire, spoke of high streets as the beating heart of our communities. On that, at least, we agreed, before making a speech that seemed to omit the fact that Liz Truss crashed the economy and left not only an impaired fiscal balance sheet, an economy that had been flatlining and devastated public services. I waited, again with bated breath, for the official spokesperson of the Conservative Party to offer their fiscal alternative in face of the teeth of the criticism that was directed towards the government. But alas, it appears that I waited in vain. Now, I want to address as many of the points as possible. Time is, I'm afraid, against me. I want to address as many of the points that have been raised today as I can. But before I do, I want to say a bit about the government's wider commitment to supporting our high streets. Because honourable members on all sides would agree that, as we've heard, they play a vital role in providing a place for communities to come together, to work, to socialise, to shop and access essential services. And the sectors that underpin high streets play a huge role in our broader economy. The retail sector directly supports some 2.9 million jobs across the UK and generated £110 billion of GVA, gross value value, in 2023. The UK hospitality sector, meanwhile, employs around 2.2 million people. This was estimated to contribute about 52 billion GVA in 2023 alone, and remains a key driver of the UK's tourism industry. But let's be clear, high street businesses can only prosper and grow on the firm foundations of economic stability. And that, alas, is certainly not what we inherited last July. Instead, we faced a £22 billion black hole inherited from those created by the previous government, featuring hundreds of unfunded pressures on public finances and countless uncosted measures that failed to withstand even the slightest scrutiny. The honourable gentleman's speech who introduced the debate spoke very eloquently about his experience working for Woolies. I would respectfully note that Woolies actually ceased trading under a previous Conservative government, a matter that seemed to be omitted from the eloquent remarks of the honourable gentleman. But let's return to the economic record more broadly of the Conservatives. At the budget, the Chancellor made, frankly, some very difficult choices, but decisions were necessary to fix the foundations of a broken economy and to provide.
The sitting is suspended for 15 minutes for a division in the House. Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Order, order. The sitting is resumed. The debate may now continue till 5:45. Minister.
Mr. Chairman, along with every one of the speakers who have spoken in this evening's debate, we want as a government to support strong, thriving, mixed-use high streets which generate high footfall and high degrees of social capital in their local communities. That's why we're focused on a 5-point plan to breathe life back into local high streets. High streets that, if we are candid with each other, have faced challenges, as I mentioned earlier, from changing retail patterns for some decades now. This plan includes addressing antisocial behaviour and retail crime, an issue raised by a number of people around the Chamber this evening, reforming the business rate system, working with the banking industry to roll out banking hubs, stamping out the vexed issue of late payments, and empowering communities to make the most of vacant properties, again another issue that was raised frequently on the floor this evening. In our first 7 months in office, we've also made good progress in relation to this plan. As the Honourable Member knows, just yesterday we introduced the Crime and Policing Bill, which will scrap the effective immunity for low-value shoplifting and do more to protect retail workers from assault. I hope this can find consensus on all sides of the Chamber. We are also providing additional funding to crack down on the organised gangs who target retailers and have done so with worrying frequency over recent years. Only this morning we announced the expansion of the Sector-Based Work Academy programme, SWAPS as it's called, to make 100,000 more places over the next financial year. This will provide opportunities for participants in England and Scotland receiving certain benefits of training towards a job in hospitality and other high street sectors. We followed through on our promise to reform business rates and level the playing fields for high streets across the country with lower tax rates for retail, hospitality and leisure properties. And we want to build on this momentum with our upcoming small business strategy. This strategy will set out how we intend to support our small businesses on the high street and beyond. Our strategy comes with a clear recognition that the way we work and live in a fast-evolving landscape is changing, and we must ensure, therefore, our approach reflects the continually changing reality of our high streets. We have to make sure we're supporting services that are fit for modern life, recognising that no two high streets, for all of the eloquence with which people have spoken this evening, are in fact the same. Let me now turn to some of the specific issues that honourable members addressed. Critically, crime and antisocial behaviour. Business rate reform and our approach to national insurance contributions are some of the economic levers taken by the Treasury to support the high street. But to create thriving high street environments takes, frankly, a whole-of-government approach. The Department of Business and Trade is working closely, therefore, with other government departments, particularly MHCLG and the Home Office, to coordinate activity that support high streets and their businesses. For example, a vital element of creating those thriving high streets of which so many members have spoken is ensuring that it is safe and a comfortable environment both for the business leaders and for shoppers themselves. I've mentioned already this week's introduction of the Crime and Policing Bill, a central part of the Government's plan for change and indeed our Safer Streets mission. This bill will ensure the police and courts have the necessary powers to help tackle assault against retail workers and shop theft. It will create a standalone offence for assaulting a retail worker to protect staff, measure the scale of the problem and drive down retail crime. It is simply unacceptable that shop theft and violence and abuse towards retail workers continues to rise. We ask retailers to perform a significant act of public service.
Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.